great outdoors with Red Fisher, internationally renowned all-round sportsman, outdoor editor, and member of the Fishing Hall of Fame. This program is dedicated to adventure and the challenge of our great outdoors.
Friends, I'm Red Fisher, and this is Scuttlebutt Lodge, the tall tale capital of the world. And each week up here, we have a guest come up and tell us their tall tale of their experiences in our great outdoors. Today, I have as my guest Leon Chandler, one of the finest, nicest guys that I know. He's vice president of the Cortland Line Company. And I'd say, Leon, it's real good having you up to Scuttlebutt Lodge.
Finally got up here, Red.
Yeah, you did, and it took a long time. You know something, Leo? You still in Cortland, New York?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't leave there, Red. Cortland, New York must be the garden spot of the world. We're right in the middle of the state. We have the Finger Lakes nearby. We have a lot of trout streams and lots of lakes to go fishing in.
You sound like you're on the Chamber of Commerce up there. Leon, you done any fishing lately?
Oh, as much as I can. I fish at every opportunity. Not nearly enough, but...
Of course, you know, friends, I want to tell you one thing about Leon. Leon is, he's just dedicated to fly fishing. He's dedicated to fly fishing. And I would say, Leon, why don't you and I go inside where it's more comfortable and get to your tall tale on fly fishing,
that sounds like a good
Let's
idea.
get in, because I know once I get you started on fly fishing, that's the end of...
For unpredictability and outright cussedness, a pike is a battler worthy of the experienced sports fisherman. When hunting pike, use the lures that were especially designed to do the job more than 75 years ago. Daredevils.
Leon, you know, you've given up your life to fly fishing. I mean, that's all you ever do is preach it and preach it and preach it, how wonderful it is and everything else. Are you still going that circuit?
I feel pretty strongly about it, Red, because so many people have the mistaken idea that fly fishing is very difficult and that only the expert does it, and this isn't true at all.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing in the world to learn. I've seen a kid 5 years old when, what's his name, Packner got on. He had her casting in less than 5 minutes.
Well, the important thing is to make sure that you have properly balanced equipment and know the technique that you're trying to accomplish, and then it's just a matter of having fun. A lot of people also have the mistaken idea that fly fishing is reserved only for trout fishing, and this isn't true at all.
Listen, I've heard bluegills snap like a 22 when they hit the flies.
Oh, that bluegill is a great fish.
And they're universal. They're in every state and every province in the North American continent.
Every farm pond, Red, has bluegill, and this fish offers more fishing pleasure to more people than any other fish, I believe.
Well, of course, Leon, you're all over, and I would have to say this, and I want to tell the friends this, that Leon has asked me to put aside his tall tale for this week and give him the chance to spend his guest appearance here to try and show and teach you how to fly fish. And I believe that's what you wanted, isn't it, Leo?
Yeah, I think probably, Red, the first thing that we should discuss is the equipment. Now, obviously, proper equipment is a very important part of the whole thing. The rod, for example, there are many different types of rod. I think if I were going to select a rod for myself, probably the most important factor would be the name of the manufacturer. I want to make sure that this manufacturer is a reputable concern and one that will stand behind their product. Most of the rods being made today are made of tubular glass, and they run from lengths from about 7 feet to about 9 feet. And which to use is largely a matter of preference. If you're using fishing for heavy fish, you want a longer rod, obviously, than if you're fishing for light fish. And a good rod is a mighty fine thing to own. The matter of balance is important. It would be a mistake to put a heavy reel, for example, on a very light rod. Reels come in two basic types. There's the simple single-action reel, where you just wind the handle one revolution and the spool turns one revolution. This is a lighter weight reel. Then there's the automatic reel, and inside is a spring mechanism, and as you strip the line out, then the tension is built up so that when you press the lever, the line comes in. The line should always be transferred to the reel by rolling it off the coil that the manufacturer puts it in. Never take a line off over the end of a coil, because then you put twist in the line, and this is sometimes difficult to get out. It's also, speaking of lines, a good idea to keep a line clean. One of the most important things, and probably the most important part of fly fishing equipment, are the lures, or the type of flies that we use. First are the dry flies. Now these are constructed of hair and feathers and tinsel and various things, and the dry fly is constructed in such a manner that it will float. And these are generally fished upstream and allowed to float down on the surface, and of course they look very much like a fallen insect and are very effective when fish are feeding on the surface, especially trout. Now the dry fly is very good for trout.
They're a lot of fun making, Leon.
Oh yes, this is a good hobby also. Then we have the wet fly, and the wet fly is constructed a little differently so that it sinks. Then we have the larger wet fly, which is called the streamer, and these are generally fished downstream or cast across stream and allowed to sweep down with the current. And then with a rod tip, you just work that lure so that the hackles open and close. It looks like a swimming minnow or a fallen insect. The popping bug is usually made of cork, painted various colors, and dressed off with either feathers or sometimes a rubber skirt, and rubber material is used for legs, and these are cast out around stumps or lily pads or places where fish lie.
The little ones are real good for your bluegills.
Oh yes, very good, very good. Now the theory of fly casting is primarily one of casting the line. Now obviously a little fly, a little dry fly, is not heavy enough to cast with a spinning outfit or a casting outfit, so we must use the weight of the line to cast it out. And this is very important. Make sure that the line is heavy enough for your particular rod. And in the actual casting technique, there are some things to avoid. One is be very careful and don't let that rod go too far back. If you let the rod go too far back, then you can't use the weight of the line against the rod to get the power to catapult the line out.
It usually hits the water ahead of you or behind you when you do it with the coming way back over your
Yeah, and you
shoulder.
not only scare all the fish, but you just don't get any distance.
No action on your lure either, because it doubles up before it gets out.
It'll just pile up, that's right.
Yeah, well, there's a wrong and a right way for everything, and if they start off doing it the right way, I think they'd be a lot further ahead.
Well, the proper method is to grasp the rod firmly with the thumb on top and hold it firmly. Grasp the line in the left hand and hold this very tightly also so that it doesn't slip. Then it's a matter of lifting the line and stop the rod at about 1 o'clock. This throws the line high in the air behind you. Now it's very important to keep that back cast high so that you can use the weight of the line against that rod. Just imagine the face of an imaginary clock and just stop that rod at about 1 o'clock, let the line straighten out, then push it forward. Here you see the right way, see the line backing up there, so that I'm actually getting the weight of the line against the rod, and there's nothing difficult about fly fishing. Fly fishing is particularly good for the ladies and the children because it doesn't require great strength.
And the roll cast that you use when you're fishing, that's usually when you got a lot of foliage behind you, isn't it?
Yeah, the normal casting procedure is to do the regular false cast. You have to throw as much line behind as you do forward. Now, if you're in a spot where you have trees or other obstructions behind you and you can't make a full back cast, then you use what we call the roll cast, and this is very easy to do once you get the technique and know what you're trying to do.
You know, it's really beautiful to watch too when that line makes a big arc, a symmetrical arc, and the fly just goes out there.
There are various ways of retrieving the line. Once you get the fish on, the first thing you want to do is to get that line under the finger on your rod hand, and you control the fish from there with the pressure of this finger. Now, some people prefer to bring the line in loops and then feed it out again on the cast. I personally have a technique that I find very effective, especially fishing with popping bugs or wet flies or streamers, and this is the figure 8 retrieve.
I call it dibble the finger.
And I just merely wind the line around my fingers in a figure 8, and I've always got control of the line. If I get a hit, I can set the hook immediately. And then if I want to shoot the line out again, it'll feed right off my fingers.
You set the hook with your finger, with your hand. That's got the line.
I set the hook because I have tight control of the line. I can set the hook without grabbing for the line and wondering where it is. This is very effective, especially with popping bug fishing. Now, if I'm fishing dry flies in a fast stream, I can't pick the line up fast enough. The roll cast is very simple. It's just a matter of pulling the rod back until the line is behind the rod, stop, and then snap the rod forward sharply. And that line will roll out there very nicely.
Like I say, it's a beautiful cast, and it comes in handy when you're where there's a lot of foliage behind you. I think I use the roll cast more than any other cast.
I use this a lot, Red, when I'm fishing a shoreline from a boat. I'll sometimes just roll cast the shoreline. I'll hit about every foot as you go down through.
Yeah, you can measure the shoreline real good.
Yeah.
Well, of course, fly fishing itself is the thrill.
Well, there's no thrill quite like it. I find that even when I'm not catching fish, the satisfaction that I have of laying that line in just where I want it, it's a difficult thing to describe, really.
Well, there's romance to it. I would have to call it. There's romance, I think.
Yeah. That looks like fun, doesn't it?
Well, Leon, you know me, when I get to hear your stories about the fish you catch and the way they battle, and especially on that real light tackle. Yeah. You got a trout on there now, haven't you, Leon?
Yeah. See, now the line is under my finger on the rod hand, and I'm controlling the fish from there. And I strip the line in and just let it fall in the water. I'll worry about the line after I get the fish in. I'm tiring him out, and I got a little problem with the net there, but the fish is not going anywhere. So then we just lead him into the net very gently, and this is one of the big thrills of living, is catching a nice fish in a nice atmosphere like this. The birds are singing and the grass is green.
Yeah, well, you know that, but a lot of people out there watching us don't know. They should try it, you know. This fly fishing has really got something. I love it, you know.
That's for sure.
And, Leon, I'd have to say this. The best part of your story was that fish on the end of that line.
Red, I'm beginning to think you're a meat fisherman.
No, you know better than that, Leon. Good heavens. But I love the sport fishing.
There's nothing to compare with fishing, and there's so many degrees of fishing that can be enjoyed. This is one of the great things that fishing offers.
Well, of course, you and I always tangle because I'm a spinning fisherman and you're a fly fisherman. But I'd have to say this, Leon, that I've done a lot of fly. Incidentally, I fly fish with the spinning outfit.
Yes, I know.
And that's really a thrill because it's ambidextrous and everything, you see. Uh-oh, Leon, there's a wild goose coming over, which means that in a short time I'm going to have to give our listening audience our top tip for this week.
From Lowrance Electronics, the company that's pioneered every major advance in sport fishing sonar. System 2000, 6 totally new units, the smallest, quietest gimbal-mounted flashers ever built. Technology so advanced and reliable, Lowrance fully guarantees them for 3 years. If one fails, a Lowrance service center will fix it, free. System 2000, the new ultimate in flashers. From Lowrance, #1 name in sport fishing sonar.
Friends, each week on our Great Outdoors, we bring you a real good top tip, and today's top tip is about scaling fish. To start off with, one of the best scalers is to nail a couple of pop bottle caps on the end of a piece of wood. Get them nailed on right next to one another, and then you have one of the best scalers that's ever been made. You leave the rough side out. Then when you have your scaler made, you turn around and get your fish and put him in a pan of water filled about 1/3 full of water. When you start scaling with your handmade scaler, the scales come off and the water cleans the fish while you're scaling. And then instead of the scales flying all over the place, you just dump the water out, scales and all. And I think that top tip will come in handy.
Red, that's an excellent tip. Really.
Yeah? What'd you like about it most,
It's a
Leon?
pretty nice bluegill, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought that's what you were looking at. See,
Well,
talking
that's-
about bluegills, they're a tremendous fish.
That's one of my favorite subjects. You know, I'm in the fishing tackle business, and because of this, I've had an opportunity to fish a lot of places for a lot of different kind of fish. But I can say most sincerely and most honestly that I think the fishing that I really enjoy most is fishing for bluegills in small lakes and farm ponds with light fly rod equipment and little popping bugs.
Well,
And
Leon,
this kind
what
of fishing
fish-
is available to everyone.
What fish is on the end of the cane pole in the picture of every youngster that's caught a
Right,
fish? Got to be
right.
that bluegill.
This is a universally most popular fish.
And they're a lot of fun on a fly rod. They'll pop again like a 22 when
Yeah,
they do.
that's
Leon, I want to get away from this fly fishing for a minute, though. The folks, you don't know it, but Leon has had the good fortune of representing the United States government State Department behind the Iron Curtain in an exhibition of the American and Canadian fishing tackle that we use over here. And one of the most interesting stories I ever heard was his story about those people over there looking and watching our type of fishing and fishing tackle. Leon, tell us about that, because I've never quite forgot. Where was it that you first went over?
Well, Rod, this was a most fascinating and rewarding experience. I went over first to Finland and then later to Poland and to Hungary for the Commerce Department and the State Department to show and to demonstrate American fishing equipment and techniques. And I gathered together what I consider to be a representative assortment of American and Canadian fishing equipment, rods and reels and lures and
From all
lines,
manufacturers.
from about 25 or 30 of the leading manufacturers of equipment. And we set up a display, and then we demonstrated the methods that we use and why we use open face spinning, for example, and the push button reel and the fly rod and the bait casting rod. And it was a very interesting experience in that I found Polish fishermen and Hungarian fishermen, even though their political philosophy may be somewhat different than mine, they're fishermen at heart. And I could take a rod or a reel and place it in the hands of a fisherman, and even though we couldn't speak the language, I don't speak either of those languages, and very few spoke English, but a bond of understanding seemed to develop between the two of us as fishermen.
Yeah, well, you commuted.
I made a great many friends over there. It was a fascinating
Well,
experience.
Leon, you were telling me that when you did go to the government stores over there, they make fishing tackle, but this particular week was all minnow pockets, wasn't it? Or?
Well, of course, in the economy of especially Poland and Hungary, they don't have room for much consumer goods, and especially luxury type consumer goods like fishing equipment.
Well, Leon, getting back to fly fishing, there's a mistaken conception that you can't get big fish on them. I've caught muskie and I've caught pike on them and pickerel on fly rods. How about you? What's some of the biggest fish you caught?
Oh, I'm not sure. There's a limit to how big a fish you can catch on a fly rod. 2 or 3 years ago, we were up in Labrador. Bill Cullerton, whom you know, and I were up there, and we had a lot of fun fishing for a variety of fish, but I think we had most fun fishing for whitefish. Now, whitefish is a fish that's not normally considered a game fish, and we were catching them on small flies, and this is great fun. They were running 3, 4, 5 pounds, and we were catching them on light fly rod equipment and small trout flies. Now, along in the evening, a hatch of flies would come out, and we tried to match the hatch as best we could. And these fish, they're not only they hit savagely, but they just they won't come in very easy.
Well, they've got an awful timid mouth. I mean, Billy's really horsing them there. That rod's bent over double. Was he able to hold them? Of course, with a fly rod, you don't get that terrific strain on the fish's mouth, do you?
Yes, you do, Red. We have to be very careful, and I would guess that we probably lost 2 out of every 3 that we hooked before we could get them in, because they were in fast water, and with the small flies and their tender mouth, you had to be quite careful.
Well, yeah, he's
Bill,
nursing that one along real carefully, isn't he?
Bill has a little trouble being tender with fish, you know. He gets pretty excited.
Hey, you talk about the meat fisherman. There's your man.
But now this is a an 8.5-foot rod, I believe, a glass rod. But see that's bending over. The fish is in the current, and it's a great thrill to finally get him in, knowing that he has a tender mouth.
There's one for the frying pan. Say, talk about frying pan. That'd be good smoke, Leon.
Yeah, also
Have you ever
they're also very good cooked over the open fire.
Yeah?
Here's a mayfly. This is the fly that we were trying to match with our artificials, and we went through our box and found the one that looked most like the natural fly, and here we have two fish on at the
I
same
imagine
time.
you had them all, 2 fly rods and two whitefish in the rapids.
Can you imagine that? And they start going in different directions and try to keep them apart.
Oh, that was really, you got them both in, huh? I imagine you guys had a real feed of whitefish while you were up there.
We had a
was
lot
it
of fun.
cold up there at that time of the year?
Yeah,
Leon?
this was, I believe, in June, and we had snow one night, and this is quite a ways up, of course.
Old Billy looks real proud of himself with all those big fish, you know.
Then we
He
went
knows-
across to the Kepamitz River and fished from shore for brook trout, and we caught a few lake trout in this same area. Now here we used streamer flies and sinking lines in order to get the flies down in that fast water. And we would cast these flies out and let them swing down with the current, and then work them with the rod tip to make the streamer look like a minnow swimming upstream.
That rod tip is the answer. That's really the difference.
Fishing wet flies or streamer flies, you want to impart some action to that fly and make it look as lifelike as possible.
You had quite a battle with this one, huh, Leon?
We had some excellent fishing there. Of course, the brook trout is, I suppose, one of the favorite fish of most trout fishermen, and they're beautiful fish, and they're in this fast water. Of course, they're very strong, and they just don't give up. Here you see the comparison between the brook trout and a small lake trout.
Well, Leon, look, I say this. You really, I hope you come back someday, because for all of us here and all of the people out there, I want to say thank you for coming up and speaking of your first love.
You work in a little fishing, and we'll get up here for sure.
You've got a deal, Leon. And now I'll be back in a moment, Leon, but first I'm going to have to give my editorial for this week. So I'll see you in just a little bit.